been starting my cast with some Mario music recently. I don't know why. It's just how it's been. I've been like, let's start this thing up, and here's a tune. Today here on JON Radio, we've got a fresh one off the track from the Mario Brothers. Mario Brothers Blues. Ba-dum bum 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 ba-da-dum dum. No 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 ba bum ba bum bum ba-dum bum bum ba-dum ba-dum bum ba-dum bum. Hey 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 yeah mo. Hey yeah ba-da-ba-da. That's good classic entertainment right there. Hope you guys are all doing really well out there in the world. I did not really sleep last night. So this is going to be a fun one. Loud and clear. Thanks, Cotton. Good to see you grinning. Good to see you, Cotton. Yeah, I got to get this mic replaced. Absolutely. When can I stream on TikTok? Never. I have been banned on TikTok. Straight up. I have been banned on TikTok, Traster. It's, I may try, so what that means, right, is that even if I manage to get my, get a new account up on TikTok, which it looks like somehow they have banned me from getting onto TikTok through my phone. That it's just a straight up, like, nope, all of my emails, all of my phone numbers, all of that kind of stuff. I'm literally going to have to, like, create a new email, I think. But even then, it's like, oh, this is connected to his Google account and like all this kind of stuff. And so I think I might try to do it through my desktop at some point. But even then, TikTok doesn't let you start. I've already tried that, Traster. Thanks, bud. TikTok doesn't let you start live streaming until you have 1,000 followers. So it's going to be a bit of time if I were to go TikTok, the TikTok route again. I may try doing that. I don't know. Because right now I'm kind of in a like fuck TikTok sort of mood. Honestly, I'm in a just like what the shit is this thing? Like what a ridiculous. The app is clearly run by like NATO operatives. It's so obvious that if you that they are looking to get rid of communists and leftists of all sorts from that platform. It's very, very clear. Like, you hear story after story. I was seeing people, like, there was this one fellow who I was following on TikTok. He's based here in Toronto, and I should try to find him again. His name is Pink Williams, and he was a communist. He called himself the Commie Cowboy. And his hair was dyed pink and all this kind of stuff. And so he had a pretty recognizable look, and he was playing class-conscious songs of a country nature, right? So and some of his stuff's really good, actually. Some of his stuff's really good. And he basically leaves the platform and says that he's leaving the platform because he would upload songs and they would just get taken down, right? And so I am more or less of the opinion that TikTok is heavily censoring any kind of like revolutionary talk, any kind of conversation that is about actually building something meaningful is going to get you removed from the platform. And the only thing they seem willing to tolerate is the philosophical sort of stuff, the philosophy and history. Those seem to be the tolerated limits of the discourse. That you are allowed to say things like, well, hey, this event that everybody thinks is real is actually not real. And so it's essentially like, oh, you looked at the Wikipedia article, right? Like that if you actually look at Wikipedia, Wikipedia is interesting, right? Like it's been infested with CIA operatives without a doubt, but it looks like the CIA hasn't been able to just take Wikipedia over, so it's not fully censored. Like if you go to the Azov Battalion Wikipedia right now, they will tell you all about the Nazi history of the Azov Battalion. It's right on the Wikipedia page. That it's a little bit more buried than it was at one point, right? It was a little bit more prominent at one point, but it's there. And that seems to be the strategy that the power structure is taking, that they're like, okay, we can't simply eliminate this information. We can't, like, if somebody comes forward with a source and with a real document, and they want to put it on this page, we can't simply say no, and that there are people involved in that process who are absolutely dedicated to the idea that, like, this isn't a blog, this is an information source gathering site, and if you have information and if it's valid and if it's from a valid source, we're going to host it. And so the strategy now seems to be to just obfuscate as much as possible and bury things as much as possible, right? Really make people dig for information, right? The information is there, but really, really, really make them dig for it. And so there are TikTokers who do that digging and then bring it up and talk about it, and it's like, okay, you can't really ban people for that, right? You can't ban people for presenting information that is real, that has been verified, and then it has verifiable sources. So that's fine. It's if you start actually organizing and planning against the capitalist class, if you actually start coming up with strategies, if you actually start trying to say, hey, these people are our enemies, and we should treat them as if they are our enemies, right? That's how you get banned off that platform. And so, as long as you remain kind of passive and inert and academic, then they seem to tolerate you. But it's the moment you're actually like, yeah, I mean, like, I think the thing that ultimately gets me banned off TikTok is that I talk about an article that's talking about the spike in theft in corporate culture and how corporations are experiencing higher levels of theft. And I'm literally like, yeah, like the Robin Hood narrative, right? Robin Hood is the good guy. That if you hoard a bunch of wealth, the proletariat, the working class, like, will rise up against and begin stealing from you, and that if you don't want that to happen, then you should not act like Prince John, and the proletariat's not going to ask for permission. And simply by creating that argument, simply by saying that the system is illegitimate and you don't need to follow its laws, right? Like, you're under no obligation to follow the laws of this society any longer. Like, it's incredulous. It doesn't have credibility any longer. So simply by saying that on TikTok, that's what gets you removed, because the system is owned straight up by NATO operatives, which is, like, you know, historically is very pro-Nazi, is very pro-fascist, yeah. So I might restart TikTok up again and start that journey once again. But the truth, honestly, Traster, I got to be really honest with you, it doesn't seem to be worth it. That the goal is to sort of use TikTok as fishing, to kind of create a fishing hole for people to come. But the reality is that, like, if I talk the way that I talk on my regular YouTube on TikTok, I just get banned. Like, my live stream was getting banned fairly regularly because I was, like, saying things that I think are actually non-controversial. Things like, it is completely fine to kill Nazis. Like, it is. It's like, my grandparents literally went overseas and killed Nazis. We all, as a generation of people, like Indiana Jones is walking around with a pistol, just being like, Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. Wolfenstein is a game franchise that basically equates Nazis to demons, that just, like, you're openly gunning down Nazis. Nazis are the reason World War II happens. If you see people walking around organizing along Nazi lines, it is fine to arm yourself and fight back against them. Like, this gets me banned on TikTok, right? Because TikTok is run by NATO, which is a pro-Nazi organization. And they certainly don't like it when you point out that NATO is a pro-Nazi organization. That it was put into power in order to organize the fascist forces of Europe under a single banner and rehabilitate and rebrand the Nazis. Right? Many of the Nazis go work for NATO. So the whole idea of getting back on TikTok is just kind of like, I just don't think it's worth it. I think that I would be better off trying to build a base somewhere else and trying to get involved in something else. Rumble looks promising, but Rumble's a little behind the 8 ball, honestly, in terms of content creation. It's not as good as even YouTube. And then there's also like YouTube Shorts. Like that's a thing that I could start getting more involved in a more serious way. So it's not like there's nothing, right? It's not like there's nothing. But really, I think the big thing that I really, really want to focus on is simply word of mouth. That I think if you actually study markets at all, and even in this digitized world that we live in, the number one way to spread the word about your about your product and to increase sales and all that kind of stuff is still word of mouth. And so when I do my pitch, like, share, subscribe, hit the bells, hit the whistles, do all the stuff. I've got a Patreon in the thing. You can donate directly, all that kind of stuff. I'm making sure that I say now, because this is actually, to me, the most important thing to say now. Tell people I exist. Tell people I exist. That if you're with a coworker or a friend or a neighbor or your family or anything, and they're sitting there being like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to listen to somebody," and all this, I don't really know. I've been listening to this guy, but I don't know, blah blah blah. I'm looking for somebody, right? Even if they're not looking for somebody, and you get kind of talking about podcasters or something, well, let them know I exist. Tell people. Many of you are here fairly regularly, right? And so I hope that you would have the confidence to tell other people that you know, and and then the idea is that those people tell somebody else, and then those two people tell somebody else, and down the line it goes, right? Until finally there's 100 billion people in my chat, and we're all plotting the downfall of Western civilization together as a unified body. This is a great opportunity. This is something that I've been really, really meaning to do, and I've been really, really thinking about. Finally, I got my act together. I would like to do shout-outs to the people who are actually donating to me at the $5 and $10 level. So that's Paul Bokian. Thank you so much for your donation, bud. I appreciate it. Nick Lowe. An illusion, what are you implying? At the $5 level, Jeremy Forer. Mikhail Johnson. Harmony Green, JR, Miranda Peltier, Jonathan Cook, Lawnmower Man, Michael Fine, and Robin Avery. Thank you so much for your donations, guys. Thank you so much for being the backbone of all of this. Thank you so much for being the people who are dedicated to all of this. Eric's making me nervous. What happened to your mic? Is my mic not coming through? Am I quiet? Am I quiet? No, we're good. We're good. According to the tech, we're all good. My mic cut out the other night, and Just Me says, this is classist to only shout out big donors. Maybe you might be right, Just Me. You might be right, honestly. I do have to create some kind of delineation, though. Like, I do. I have to. One of the things that I was hoping I was going to be able to do would be to produce different content for higher level donators, and I've really been struggling with this, because I only have so much energy and I only have so much that I can put forward, and so I think I have to draw a line in the sand and say that if you're willing to donate $1, to me, then I'll be happy to put you in the Discord. Well, thank you, Just Me. I do appreciate it, dude. I do. I appreciate it so much. Thank you. And my mic is. I gotta get a new mic. It's as simple as this. I gotta get a mic, a new mic. This mic is getting very unreliable. I'll do this next week. To speak directly to this, Just Me, because we're talking about money, right? We're talking about money. And so I want to be very specific. I simply have to draw a line somewhere. I have to offer something to someone who is going to give me more support than simply $1. I very much appreciate the people who have been donating $1 from the very beginning. Believe me, I'm over the moon about that support. But I have to do something different, right? Well, and so thank you, Just Me. I do appreciate it. I'm not trying to alienate anybody. And it's something I've been talking about for a little while. So thank you so much for your support, my man. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you so much. Snake says, glad you put out your review. You were rather against it the other night. I was against it because my perception of it was that it was going to be another one of these kind of just childish movies, but it's actually dealing with some fairly serious subjects, right? Not just the nature of the patriarchy, but also, and what we're talking about here is the Barbie movie, but also, like, we're not just talking about the patriarchy, but also, like, straight up the nature of what it is to be a human being. That death, the looming sense of our mortality, is actually, like, really central to the one of the central themes of the movie. That Barbie becomes aware of her own mortality. Like, that's very, very, very deep. Like, that's a very, very deep subject for something like Barbie to tackle. And I really found myself, like, I found that to be very surprising. Like, when I was watching that movie, I really was expecting it to just sort of be like bubblegum pop, like, very kind of low, like Mario, right? Like Mario, right? Like fun, interesting in its color and its storytelling and all of that. But, like, not much to it, fairly airy. But the Barbie movie is not airy, right? But this is what's interesting, Snake, is that I do still think it's a children's movie, but I think it's a children's movie that's actually invested in getting the children to grow up. And I think that's really what that film is about in many ways, is that it's about raising the consciousness of a child. It's about a child going from that state of innocence, right? That state of, oh boy, everything's perfect and it's gonna be like this forever, to it's not going to be like this forever. It is going to change. You're going to grow up. You're going to face real issues. You're going to face the patriarchy. Like, when you're a little girl, you are unaware of the patriarchy. You're not really aware of it. And it isn't until you become an older woman, until you become a teenager or older, that you begin to become aware of this even as a concept. And then it's only as you see it happening around you that you can begin to actually interact with it in a meaningful way. And then also the sense of your own mortality and all of this. So I do still think it is a children's movie, and I think that it is very clever in its understanding of the society that it is in, which is to say that we're a childish society. We're like in this sort of Peter Pan state where we refuse to grow up. But it's actually saying, okay, we are children. It's time to grow up. It's time to grow up, and we should grow up. And here is a way to begin to think about how we should be growing up. And I think that that's quite admirable. There's something there to that I think really, and I said it in my review, that the most interesting thing about the Barbie movie, whether you agree or disagree with its position, at least it's taking a position. That it's not doing things in a snide sort of sideways, backwards kind of thing. It's not trying to wedge anything in there. It's not trying to jam anything in there. It's not trying to take like a classic, like it's not trying to take James Bond and make James Bond feminist, right? It is taking like a toy for girls that women interact with, and they're telling a woman's story and a feminist story. And so in this way, it's got such an amazing amount of honesty to it that you actually do have to, in many ways, admire that they're simply taking a position and defending it. And I can see why the kind of little boys like Ben Shapiro in the discourse are responding to it the way that they are. But I feel like you can't really ignore that that it's kind of throwing the gauntlet down. And it's saying, hey, there's this patriarchy that exists. We should probably discuss this. This should probably be something that we all talk about and know about and learn about. Right? And so there's a of course, my criticism as a Marxist, and I sort of mentioned it again in the review, is that they really don't get into the intersection of the patriarchy and capitalism. That capitalism plays a fairly large role in all of this. That there is like the commodification of the individual, the commodification of sex, the commodification of the self that occurs through capitalism. It's Warner Brothers, it's Mattel. They're not going to stand up and make a big claim about capitalism, right? That I think there was like this one moment where I think the teenage girl at one point said the word capitalist in like a kind of glancing sort of sideways way. And so this is the way that they are acknowledging the existence of capitalism, but then they basically just push it aside, right? They basically just push it aside, and then it's just about patriarchy. It's just about this kind of a thing. And I don't think you can actually have like a very deep and interesting conversation about the patriarchy without also discussing the nature of capitalism. What the film did do controlled opposition, it had that kind of feeling about it. What the film did do in a very clever sort of way, I thought, was that because they create in the Barbie world a matriarchy, right? That the Barbie world is a matriarchy, and the Barbies are the ones that have all the power, and the Barbies are all the ones that are in positions of power and all this kind of stuff, which is exactly in line with the kind of ethos in the world of Barbie, and so it's like completely inoffensive. And then they go into the real world, and that dynamic is flipped, and it's very stark and noticeable, and Barbie is commenting on the differences and how people feel and the differences and how she feels in this world where that dynamic has been flipped, and then the patriarchy goes into Barbie world. To me, this moment where Ken takes over Barbie world with like the patriarchy seems a bit. I feel they could have been a little bit more. I don't know. Maybe the word is specific. Like it felt a touch ham-handed, but I still think they accomplished their objective, which was to get people to think about that inversion, to get men especially, right? To get men thinking about what would it be like to be a man living in a world that was run as a matriarchy, to have that power dynamic flipped. And at the end of the whole thing, there is this sort of sense that like the Kens of Barbie world are getting a little bit of power and a little bit of authority. And there's like a direct commentary that it's like, yeah, so it's exactly how much power women have been given within the society that they live in. And it's that inversion that I think is very clever and very very interesting. I feel like they could have done it a little smoother in my view. But you're asking for like it's like an hour and 40-minute movie that has beautiful people, exotic locales. Like you can only do so much, and so at the end of the day, like I feel like the thing that separates Barbie from the rest of it at this point, having now seen it from the recommendation of quite a few people around me now, the thing that separates it more than anything is that it is at least taking a position and defending that position, right? And that by itself makes it way more interesting than other movies that have come out Like way, way, way more interesting than other movies that have come out. Like really, like movies like Miles Morales, like the Spider-Man movies, like No Way Home, like all this Marvel stuff, all the Star Wars stuff, all the Disney remakes, all this kind of stuff. Like you might have fun watching it. It might be visually interesting, but they're not actually saying anything important. Right, and they're not trying to take a position on anything outside of like good guys beat bad guys up, and that's fine. But they're not actually taking a position and defending that position, right? And that's what the Barbie movie does, and so that makes it already laudable. And I think that's true even if you think that what they're saying is bad. I think that's true if even if you are like, oh, this patriarchy talk and the feminists are all around. Well, too bad. You've got to deal with it. And the reality that there are men in the world who watch this movie and react the way that they do, which is like children, right? It's like they're children. Girls are icky, right? So instead of actually listening to what women are saying about what they feel their lived experience in this world actually is, right, the strange contradictory nature of being a woman in the society, instead of actually listening to that and thinking about that in a serious way and asking yourself, why do so many women respond to this? Why is this something that women respond to? And at the same time, like the same guys that are saying like, oh, these girls are just icky and they just what a terrible worldview and all this kind of stuff, are listening to guys like Andrew Tate. Like are like, yeah, men with the power. We got to take back our power, and because the truth is that like it's normal for men to feel as though they are losing power in this society because they are losing power in this society, right? That if you have 100% of the power, and then you lose 1% of that power, you are losing power, right? Like, so, but things have been so out of whack and so unbalanced for so long in this society, especially in regards to this issue, that any loss of any power whatsoever is being perceived as a total threat by the male population. When the truth is that the male population is still well in control of what's going on, right? We're still well overrepresented in almost all fields. Like, it's pretty difficult to, I think, make the case seriously that that men are not the ones that are dominating a lot of these things, and that if there is any kind of rebalancing or redressing that is occurring, it's happening steadily. It's happening slowly and steadily over time. So, and something like the Barbie movie, I think, is a fine place for people to have a conversation, even though ultimately and fundamentally it is a children's movie, right? Like, but it's a children's movie in the way that Dr. Seuss are children's books, right? Something like The Lorax is a children's book, but it has something important to say, and so you've got to acknowledge that. And I never actually thought that I would actually hear myself say these words, but the Barbie movie is actually good. Who knew? And it is worth also saying that Margot Robbie is exceptionally good. Like really, in my opinion, I always sort of looked at, like, I always knew that Margot Robbie was a good actress. Like, obviously she's a good actress, but the Barbie movie really convinced me that no, she is an exceptional actress. She's an exceptional actress who can really, really make you fall in love with her, and who can really bring out her humanity and bring out her heart. Like, I really believed that was Barbie. Like, I really, really believed that was Barbie. That was a doll coming to the realization of her own mortality. Like, that's really quite an astounding thing that she managed to do. The scene where she gets dressed down by the teenage girls and then kind of breaks down and runs off, that's as beautiful a scene as I've ever seen any actress do. Just absolutely, just a wonderful journey. Just a wonderful journey that she went on. And she gets called a fascist by the teenage, and this is actually my favorite moment in the whole movie, is that she's sitting there crying, saying, "They called me a fascist. I don't own the factories." She's like giving the textbook definition of fascism and being like, "That's not accurate." I was just like, that's really funny. And then anytime she talked about like her being stereotypical Barbie, was always very clever and always funny. And Ryan Gosling did a really, really good job. And the portrayal of Ken is worth talking about, because ultimately I think what they were attempting to capture with Ken, Ryan Gosling's Ken, is this male fragility that certainly exists in the society. That I think a big reason why the Ben Shapiro's in the conversation and the Manosphere bros don't really like the portrayal of Ken is because I think it cuts a little close to the bone for a lot of these guys. That Ken is an emotionally sort of fragile person who is defining himself in relation to another person, and doesn't actually have his own kind of personality or his own sense of his own self, which is essentially explicitly stated in the film. Like, if there was one critique to really levy at the film, it is a bit on the nose. But, you know, you've heard me say, when you're in a fight with someone, that's where you want to put it. You want to put it right on their nose. Joker was as radical as we got, so many people are uncomfy because it was Joker. Yeah. Google changed its CSS for Barbie searches? I don't know what that means. Eric says, I have to say, in regards of James Bond, I do want a transgender woman, 007. For one second reason, Pierce Morgan said if they ever make James Bond a trans person, he will kill himself. So, I want to piss fragile manhood for their bigotry towards trans. Controversial take? Right, controversial take. Leave 007 alone. Like, leave him alone. Like, I think one of the strengths of, let's use the Barbie movie as a good example, is that it's completely honest in its portrayal. Like, Barbie is a tall, beautiful, blonde woman, a straight white woman, who has this sort of prominence in as a feminist icon of sorts. And so for her for this character to be used as a way to discuss the issues of feminism is very honest. And you're not trying to shoehorn anything in or change anything or any of this. But you take a look at a character like 007, like, sorry, 007 is a spy who goes around fucking women, shooting bad guys, drinking dry martinis, and that's who he is. Like, that's who he is. That's what gets us into the theater. That's why we go see him. That's what it's about. And to take that, fundamentally change that, and then slap 007 on it is dishonest. It's not what people want. It's not what people want. It's not what the character is. And I think people who are fans of 007, and I think this is true of any character that they try to do this with, by the way, that people who are actually fans of that character are fans of that character because he is or she is as he or she is. And to make a fundamental change to it means that you're not really interested in making these movies anymore. What you really want to do is make a different movie, but you're trying to trick people to watch your movie, right? You're trying to trick people to be like, oh, a 007 movie, I'll go watch that movie, and then it's not a 007 movie, right? It's not a James Bond movie. So I think that there is validity, that if you want to make a transgender James Bond movie, then make your own character. Like, I really actually think this is true, because I think that it is dishonest to simply shoehorn that in. Like, if you want to do it as like a one-off to experiment with the idea, like what does it mean to actually have James Bond be a transgender person? What is that? What does that actually fundamentally change? Does it fundamentally change anything? Like, as a thought experiment, as like something like the Ghostbusters movie where they made the Ghostbusters female, I was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. But at the same time, you do sort of understand that it's like, you are changing the characters. Like, you are taking something that people actually love and then messing with it. And in a way that, are they asking for this? Is it something that they actually want you to do in the first place? And I think that that if you like James Bond, if you like this idea, if you like the idea of a spy, right, international a person of mystery, I suppose, and you want to make them trans, then make your own character, right? Not everything needs to be a rehash of the things that have come before it, and I just think that there's no confidence anymore. And you can see what with the writer's strike, and you can see what with the not just the writer's strike, but the actor's strike. You can see that there's a breakdown that has happened between the creators and the money, and that the money isn't really interested in taking risks anymore. And I'm very concerned, actually, that the money is basically no longer interested in playing the game anymore, right? It's just no longer interested in... I just think the money is going to go off to an island somewhere, that if they keep making stuff, it'll literally be them just being like, oh, I found this, like, Indian writer who doesn't give a shit about this union, right? That they'll basically just rebuild a new... because they have so much money, that they'll just basically rebuild like a new studio system outside of the union system, and they'll be able to do so because they have like $20 billion, you know? And the stories that they tell are just going to be kind of banal and sort of pandering, mainly pandering. And like, if I were a studio, like straight up, like if I were a studio right now, you know what movie I would really be thinking about making if I were a studio? I would really be thinking about making like a straight up, no bullshit, don't fuck around with it, James Bond movie. I would just be sitting there being like, hey, did you notice how John Wick made a ton of money? You notice how they made like 48 John Wick movies? Huh. How about instead of trying to dick around with James Bond and make him old or frail or like comment on him socially, how about, crazy thought, you make him a spy who gets embroiled in an international scandal of sorts against a villain who looks weird and has a strange idea, and along the way he drives fast cars, shoots a Walter PPK, and fucks beautiful women. How about that? Make that movie. Right? Like, why is it that every single movie that exists needs to be something other than what it is? Right? Like, if you want to make your film like a social commentary piece, like if that's what you're about, then do that. Then make that film. That's great. But like, why are you taking characters like James Bond, who never was that in the first place? Like, James Bond never was that. Ever. He was always been just like fantasy porn, that men want to be him, women want to be with him, like that kind of idea. Like it's like and why does every single thing that exists need to be seen through the lens of politics? And I think that's kind of what's exhausting people the most about everything. Like, and I know that's somewhat contradictory to my own way of looking at the world, because like I would like to see more media that has. That takes strong positions, but it just seems like everything is politicized so heavily now that it's like, just let James Bond be James Bond. Why can't James Bond be James Bond? Like, why is that bad? Like, why is it so bad that men have a little movie where they get to be like, aha, I'm a spy and I drive a fast car and I fuck women? Like, is that the worst thing that's ever happened in the world? And there are like franchises that are sort of doing it, right? Like John Wick, for example. Anyway, here I am blathering about this. Out of curiosity, how familiar are you with Slanesh and the Emperor Children from Warhammer 40k? Not that Not that familiar, my man. Like, I know a bit about Warhammer 40k. I know enough to know that it started as a parody of Empire, and then but like that's about, and then now they're not. Like, they're no longer a parody of Empire. Now they're like a glorification of Empire. Like, the Space Marines were always supposed to be this like absolute parody of a military war culture, right? But now people, I think, when they see the Space Marines, they're like, fucking awesome. Space Marines. Kick ass. I think the Wick movies intentionally embrace meaninglessness. They're beautiful but socially vacuous. Maybe a comment on human nature of a sort. John Wick is more of a cautionary tale. I mean, the man is the most miserable and efficient, skilled man alive. His life is hell. Yeah. There's a live action with him of Warhammer 40k on the horizon. Cavill gets attached and disconnected from everything. Like, at one point, he was connected to the Highlander project, and now he's not. So it's like, until I see him on the screen, I don't believe anything I see. He would be a good 007. He's getting a bit old. He's getting a bit old, honestly. Like, you want 007 to be like 30. That's what you want. So, bit of news. We should probably report on it. Largest U.S. grid declares emergency alert for July 27th. The largest U.S. grid issued an energy emergency alert level 1, meaning it is concerned about being able to maintain adequate power reserves on July 27th as consumers and businesses turn up their air conditioners amid scorching heat. PJM has ordered all power plants to be online and for consumers enrolled in demand response programs to be ready to curtail their electricity usage to keep power supply stable, according to a notice last Wednesday. Across the U.S., about 170 million people are under heat advisories or excessive heat warnings, said Bob Oravec, a senior branch forecaster in the U.S. Weather Prediction Center. Like, functioning society over here. Right, something like, we're really working here. You get great videos of Ben Shapiro being like, well, the heat's going to go up, and everybody will just turn their air conditioners on. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that we don't actually have the power grid to maintain that. That you're going to end up with brownouts, and you're going to end up with blackouts. You're going to end up with all this kind of stuff. Right? And, like, we are trundling towards this absolute disaster, and it's just beginning. And another day in the U.S. And what happens if the grid goes down? Right? Because that's happened before. What happens if the grid goes down amidst this heat? That everybody's trying to use their air conditioners, trying to stay cool, trying to survive, and then the grid goes down. Well, now you're in a real crisis. Right? Now you're going to actually have people dying of heat stroke. Now you're actually going to have like a serious emergency event on your hand. And we know exactly how the United States is going to respond to emergency events, by abandoning those people. Like, we know exactly how this goes. We've seen it happen in the United States plenty of times. Right? We all remember Hurricane Katrina. We all remember what that looked like. That it was just straight up abandonment. Like, those people were abandoned. And so if the grid goes down, like, get ready for it. I actually want to be outside of California and in GOP states. Oh, goodness. These problems have got to be intentional. Like, come on, something as basic as power. You couldn't see the demand coming. Come on now. Yeah, but everything is about cutting keeping the costs as low as possible. That's what everything's about. So they want to make sure that everything is delivered exactly at the moment. So everything is, quote-unquote, planned to the degree that you can call this planning. But everything is delivered. Like, if the capacity needs to be 100, and right now the capacity is 80, well, they'll look at the trajectory and be like, it only needs to be 100 right at this exact moment. So we're only going to make it 100 at the moment right before it. So it's like click, click. That's what they're aiming for all the time. Because that's how you keep costs low. right? That's how you keep everything low. The trouble with this mode of organization, if you want to call it organization, is that if something goes wrong, right, the whole thing gets backed up and the whole thing collapses on you because you don't actually have the service in place to deliver to the supply that exists. And it's just like, and we've seen the power grid go down before in America, right? That in Texas, for example, like I remember I did some research when the power grid went down in Texas for that period of time. I did some research. The power grid is literally owned by a handful of small private companies that operate in a council and are more or less unregulated. So, like literally, there's just like a group of millionaires and billionaires who are in control of the power grid, whose only organization is to essentially just talk to one another about how to make this thing keep working. And of course it fails, right? Of course it fails. And these guys are probably always vying for power with one another. They're always trying to figure out how to one-up one another. They're always trying to figure out how to get more money than the other guy. They're always competing with one another. Like, it's just so fucking dumb. Like, it's the dumbest shit of life. And yet this is how the system is structured to be. It's ridiculous. The AC systems in my building have been busted for over a week and a half. Oh, God, stop paying rent. You do not want to find out what living in a 90-degree apartment is like. Oh, my God. Start talking to your neighbors, man. Start talking to your neighbors. Like, this is the kind of thing that you organize rent strikes over, right? Start talking to your neighbors. Like, you can start really grinding some gears here. Since conservatives always say that renewable energy is useless and say that California is the worst state to live in, the GOP argues that it was the wind turbines that caused the Texas power grids to shut down. Yeah, well, the GOP says a lot of things. Yeah, I'm glad to hear it, Cotton. My rental, says Grinning, my rental doesn't get over 80 degrees Fahrenheit unless it's a really hot day. I can put up with that for a few hours. Oh, God. Yeah, these hot days I've been experiencing, I've just been using one fan. That's all I've got. I've just got one fan that's like blowing air through my apartment. Hot days. Hot days. It's been draining. Draining would be the word that I would use. Feels physically draining. But it's only gonna get worse. It's only gonna get worse. I love the memes that are going around about the UFOs, right? Love this meme. For those of you who are only watching, it's like literally a nuclear blast going, like a laughing capitalist in the background, tent cities all around, the forests on fire, like a seabed of dead fish. Yeah, but did you hear they found UFOs? Like, the society is right to basically shrug at it. And to basically just say, who gives a shit at all? Like, at this stage in the game, the society is collapsing to such a degree that nobody has the energy or the time to even contemplate what that means for us. Like, and I think one of my favorites that I've seen was the statement, like, unless these aliens are coming down here to, like, lower the rent or to, like, vaporize us, like, I don't have time for this. And it's absolutely the truth. Like, we don't have time for this. Like, who gives a shit? Like, they could straight out show us the alien species. The alien species could send us a message. And I would literally be like, fucking, I don't give a shit. Like, is my rent going down? Like, are my wages going up? Like, I don't give a shit. Like, unless the alien's standing right in front of me and I've got to talk to the alien, right? I don't care. Like, yeah, it's clearly released that info now to distract from everything else or something that's coming. Yeah, I more or less think that's true of the UFO stuff. Like, why now? Why at this exact moment? Like, what do you think? Like, come on, we cannot be this gullible. I really want to meet the guy who's like, whoa, aliens, whoa. and is like really, really honest about it. I'm like, do you not have bills to pay, bro? Like, do you not see what's happening in your society right now? Like, they're talking about finding UFOs in the 1930s. I can't imagine that's true given the linear nature of our technological development. Yeah, I mean, I just am more or less of the opinion that, like, if we had actually found UFOs, we'd be farther along, you know? Like, I just don't think that, and honestly, I don't think that we are, like, oh, methane. Oh, mold in the ceilings. Dude, you gotta stop paying rent. You gotta talk to your neighbors, man. You gotta, like, organize that shit. Like, for real. Like, rent strikes. Rent strikes work. That's brutal. Like, that's absolutely brutal. Well, if you're living with it because you've got super cheap rent, and then that's your thing, man. That's your thing. I would love to have a roommate right now, for sure. That would really help me out. The number one thing that would really alleviate my financial stress right now is a roommate. So if any of you happen to know somebody in Toronto who's looking for a roommate, that's no excuse for living badly. That's right. Yeah, I just, like, I have never bought into the idea that there's, like, a crashed UFO that we've been, like, vulturing and pilfering. I'm like, I don't buy that. I don't believe in that at all for a second. Like, oh yeah, a race of aliens have interstellar travel, and they for sure crash landed on Earth. Like, that for sure happened. Like, I just don't buy it. Like, I think that they would, like, it would be more like it seems outside of the realm of their technological possibility. Like, it essentially, they're saying that this thing's got anti-grav and moves with, like, anti-grav technology, but it crash landed on Earth. Like, it just something's not adding up there to me. And that so they have no safety systems whatsoever. There's no protocol whatsoever. There's absolutely nothing that exists on these alien vessels to be like, if you get into a crisis, here is what you do, right? Like, it just everything seems so fucking convenient that oh yeah, this alien craft totally crash landed. You think Lazar is full of shit? I think all of these guys are full of shit. Like, I think the entire system is full of shit. Like, I don't buy into anything any of these guys say. Like, it all seems a little too timely. It all seems a little too well placed. Like, it all seems a little bit, on the nose, right? It just seems a little bit. Here it is right now. Ben asks, "Is my rent affordable, John?" Not living by myself. Like, I'd say 60 to 70% of my income goes to rent right now. Right? Like, 60 to 70% of my income is going to rent. And if I could get that halved, like, if I could make it so it's only like 30 to 40% of my income going to rent, that would be a real game changer for me. That'd really alleviate a lot of tension in my life. And I think, given the space that I'm in, I could make it happen. And that the price point, especially given, like, rents right now in the city of Toronto, the average rent for a single bedroom is $2,200, right? For a single bedroom apartment in Toronto is $2,200. So I think I could offer, like, $750 to someone, and that would be considered reasonable, even though it's fucking still outrageous, if you ask me. Like, what's going on in this fucking society is outrageous. It's outrageous what's going on. Dude, UFOs even are the most fucked up thing in the news right now. It seems so normal compared to actual reality. Yeah, I mean, there's also that. Like, I think the powers that be kind of want us to be like, whoa, aliens. And we're all just kind of like, yeah, aliens. Okay, well, I'm off to work for these, like, pedophiles. The guy claimed under oath that we found non-human biological materials. He's not getting rich from it. Hard to interpret it any other way. He's convinced of what he's saying. But, okay, Grinning, so just because he's convinced of what he's saying doesn't mean anything to me. Like, the CIA has done, like, MK Ultra experiments. Like, the CIA knows how to incept people with things. Just because you've got one guy saying one thing that he saw the one time. Like, I'm not unconvinced. I literally am not going to care about this until there is an alien in front of me. Like, that's where I'm at with these frauds, right? That's where I'm at with these frauds. I don't give a shit what they say. I don't give a shit what pictures they show me. I don't give a shit what story they come up with. I don't give a shit. If you are actually genuinely trying to convince me that aliens are real and they walk among me, then I need a guy to be in front of me. And I don't mean on a screen. I need to see an alien walking in front of me. Like, that's how incredulous I think that these guys are. And how duplicitous and despicable I think they are. Like, I just am not. But how do you charge a guy with perjury for such a thing? Right? Like, you got to prove that he's lying, and you got to prove that he's wrong. So how do you do that? Like, do you think there is hope for our future? Says Adam 8. That's a big question, Adam 8. So, what do you mean by that? Because that's a bit big. Like, do I think that there's hope for America? No. I think it's highly likely that America will balkanize. I think it's highly likely that the federal government of the United States will be seen as a burden by its citizens, by and large, and that the interests of the billionaire class and the proletariat will align in attempting to free themselves from the burden of the federal government, and there will be a general balkanization. I think that is very, very likely. And if you look historically at what happens to empires, the most likely thing for an empire to go through is a balkanization. That the idea that America is going to stay as America forever in perpetuity, constantly till the end of time, right, is not actually something that I think can be taken very seriously. Like, America, and probably Canada too, are going to go through a balkanization period. Because I don't think once the value of the dollar drops and once the serious effects of climate change hit, the tax burden that's coming out of these institutions is simply not going to be seen as valuable or worth it from the populace. What are we actually getting? Like, what are we actually getting for all of this? Like, what when you look at your paycheck and you see the federal tax get taken off, well, what are you actually getting? Right? It's not spending on infrastructure, so it's not anything to actually help you. It's not any kind of welfare system of any sort. What is it that you're actually getting? And what you find out that you're actually getting is you're getting big gigantic subsidies for pedophile billionaires, and you're getting, little Palestinian corpses. That's basically what you're getting. And I think it's reasonable for people to finally get together and say, why are we paying these taxes? And then what's going to happen as the value of the dollar declines and as America actually does need to start paying its bills to a certain degree, they're going to start to try to tax the billionaire class. And the billionaire class is going to say, no, we're not interested in that. And so they're going to fund an independence movement. And so you have the interest of the proletariat and the interest of the billionaire class aligning in getting rid of their responsibilities or their getting rid of the burden of the federal government. A place like Texas is rife for this, right? It's all right in front of us that these sorts of things can start happening. So America is definitely not going to be moving forward. The question starts to become like, how much suffering are the people willing to tolerate before they actually finally meaningfully turn on the ownership class. That what the capitalist class is making very clear is that we have to choose between capitalists or a livable world. And the capitalist class is making it very clear that that's the choice we have to make. That the capitalists are not going to sacrifice a penny of their wealth in order to try to combat climate change. And so, how long are we going to tolerate that? How much suffering are we going to endure before finally there are just simply riots? Like, just simply straight up, like, the entire city of New York in the streets rioting. Like, how long until that actually starts to happen? That how long until people just start showing up at some of these guys' ranches? How long until that starts to happen? And I it's probably going to be sooner than you'd think. And the because people will not watch their children starve, right? Like, what's going on right now is that everybody kind of sees dark days on the horizon, right? But that's on the horizon. That we're not actually experiencing it, but we know it's coming. Do you think rioting could be a catalyst for change? Rioting is a catalyst for change. All the evidence you would ever want to see on the table is for that. Like, nothing changes unless the people are in the streets. That is the thing that foments change. Nothing else does. Like, the ruling class does not give concessions to the proletariat out of the goodness of its heart. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. And you can see that in places like France. France, very recently, they passed legislation so that food, that corporations can't just throw food away anymore. They've got to donate it now, right? It's huge. That's a huge win. That is a huge, massive win for the proletariat and for the people of France. It means that food prices are going to plummet. It means that the profiteering from food is no longer going to work, because if they try to jack food prices, people won't buy it, and they'll know we'll just be able to get it for free. So it means that the psychopath billionaire class is actually going to have to play ball. It just means they're going to have to play ball. But if you look at the history of the labor movement, it wasn't that everybody got together and voted a guy out, right? It wasn't that they all got together and like wrote down this is what we'd like to see, and then they had a reasonable negotiation. It was a long, bloody struggle. The very first aerial bombardment on American soil was a coal company bombing striking workers. Like, the history of the labor movement is bloody and riotous, with straight up gun battles and shit. And that's not going to end. Like, that's not going to end. The people that rule us are psychopaths. Like, it's not going to end. Grinning says, speaking of balkanization, Alabama is thumbing their noses at SCOTUS. Hopefully a constitutional crisis is coming. Yeah, it might happen, actually. Like, when you think about constitutional changes that have happened in the past, like when they put in what is that? The liquor laws. Like, when they put in, I'm completely blanking on what that's called, but when they changed it so that America had to go dry, right? That was a constitutional change, and then they changed it back like 4 years later. Because they realized very quickly this is creating a lot of problems, right? But what's interesting about that period is that there's an argument to be made that it actually worked, that making America go dry for a period of time actually dropped a lot of domestic abuse. It dropped a lot of health crises. It dropped a lot of issues for people, and it resolved a lot of issues. Having a period of time where the society went dry the way that it did. Methane says we are living in a dark timeline now, going down a very bad and mostly invalid path. That's the way I see it. There's always the possibility of hope, but I don't see it much anymore. I mean, I do think that some bleak things are going to happen. I just don't think that we can avoid it anymore, and that I don't think we can avoid the conversation anymore. Like, the people who are ruling us are obviously detached psychos that they literally are like entertaining things like chipping people. That's not, like, if you listen to some of these WEF guys, like, this is stuff that they're talking about, right? Like, when they're talking about things like Neuralink, well, you think they're talking about Neuralink so that they're like, yeah, we can get together and have a party? Like, no, they want to hack your brain. They want to get into your brain space. And I know this kind of sounds Alex Jonesy, where it's like, they want to put a chip in your brain, and they want to control your thoughts and control what you see, and they want to control your dreams, right? But, like, they want to put a chip in your brain. They want to be able to track you. They want to make sure that you're always working, right? And how do we know that this is how they think? Because this is what they already do. They just want to make it a technology thing. Like, they want to put a fucking collar on you, right? They want to put a little collar on you, and they want to make sure that, like, I said that he was supposed to be here, and he better be there, and I'm going to look at my tracker, and he better be there. Like, this is already the way that these people act. It's already like this. So why should we be surprised that they would also be like, yeah, let's just do it with a chip? Yeah, the powers that be will never tell us we're on the inevitable track to apocalypse. I'm not saying that's true or isn't, but they would never say, or people would go anarchist. Yeah. No, they always want people to reinvest in the system, no matter how dead it gets. Imagine an independent Florida with President DeSantis. Yeah, I mean, I actually think DeSantis has been a disaster for Florida. Like, one of the big things, they passed this legislation that essentially chased all of the illegal immigrants out of Florida, and so now they can't find workers to do anything, right? Because it turns out that, you know, comfortable white people, or like the descendants of Cuban plantation owners and old Jewish men, are not going to go work out in the beating, blazing sun for, you know, $5 an hour, right? Like, it's just not how it's going to be. It's just not how it's going to work. And so the whole state is like grinding itself to a halt. Meanwhile, DeSantis is picking fights with fucking Disney. Alabama Republicans refuse to draw a second black congressional district in defiance of Supreme Court. Here we go. Here we go. Alabama is going to declare its independence over racism. Where have we seen that before? Where have we seen that before? When has that happened before in American history? Real head scratcher. Have I heard of James Connolly? I feel like I have. I feel like that name seems somewhat familiar. James Connolly. James Connolly. U.S. trade unionist James Connolly. An Irish Republican socialist, and trade union leader. Born to Irish parents in the Cowgate area of Edinburgh, Scotland, Connolly left school for working life at the age of 10 and became involved in socialist politics in the 1880s. Socialist involvement, fantastic. Became influenced by Engels and Marx. Would later advocate a type of socialism that was based in Marxist theory. Looks like he's forming the ICA and the Labour Party. Yeah, they arrested him and they shot him. Right? Yeah, they just beat the shit out of him, actually. No surprise. Like, Connolly and the ICA made plans for an armed uprising during World War I, independently of the Irish Volunteers. In early 1916, believing the Irish Volunteers were dithering, he attempted to goad them into action by threatening to send the ICA against the British Empire alone, if necessary. This alarmed the members of the Irish Republican Brotherhood, who had already been infiltrated by the Volunteers, and had plans for an insurrection that very year. In order to talk Connolly out of such a rash action, the IRB leader, including Tom Clark and Patrick Pearse, met with Connolly to see if an agreement could be reached. During the meeting, the IRB and the ICA agreed to act together at Easter of this year. During the Easter Rising, Connolly was the commandant of the Dublin Brigade. As the Dublin Brigade had the most substantial role in the Rising, he was de facto commander-in-chief, according to whom, says Wikipedia. Connolly's leadership in the Easter Rising was considered formidable. Michael Collins said of Connolly that he would have followed him through hell. Following the surrender, so it wasn't successful, he said to the other prisoners, "Don't worry, those of us that signed the proclamation will be shot, but the rest will be set free." Yep, classic socialists. Fighting hard and losing. Seems to be the case. That's the thing about being a leftist, man. You kind of got to get used to the idea that you're going to lose. It's just going to be like, you're losing, and then humanity seems to take a tip and seems to just go, meh, maybe not. But it's not because of one person's victory. It's because the mass of the people and the zeitgeist of the people finally reach a point when they can no longer tolerate it. When the conditions become so intolerable that they would rather face death in the streets than the life that they're living on. Methane said, "Do you think there'll be food shortages in France sometime in the near future? If food isn't as profitable to the capitalists, wouldn't they rather find somewhere else to ship to?" I mean, yeah. Like, look, the capitalists have made it very clear that they'll starve people, right? That if it comes down to it, like the people of France aren't protected because they're white or something. Like, the capitalists have no soul, and if they can get a penny somewhere else, if they can get a penny more, then they'll do it. So we'll see how it all shapes out, of course. Snake says 1 million people will lose medical coverage by next year in Florida due to some new policy in Florida. He's been awful for the state. We have the second highest inflation in the country. Oh, yeah. Like, his ideas are as backwards as they get, right? Like, it's basically just like, you got to work hard but giving big giant subsidies to billionaires makes sense, right? Because it's all the same shit. Right? It's all the same shit. It's all of these politicians are doing the exact same game. Extract as much wealth out of the populace as possible for their owners. And if they get voted out of office, go work for those owners. Like, that's the grift. That's the whole situation for these guys. And, like, the reason why Pierre Poilievre here in Canada, the reason why Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh run for office is not because they actually have a vision for Canada. It's not because they actually care about the future of Canada. Not because they're actually sitting there thinking, we can do better for Canada and I've got ideas and thoughts and policies. It's because they know it's their path to wealth. That it's just basic careerism. That they're just climbing the career chain, and they see that, oh, if I win this contest, if I can convince enough people to vote me into this office, that means I'll go to work for these guys. And then when I'm out of office, then I'll just go directly work for these guys. Like, that's the whole idea, which is why Ben, like, would the election of the NDP into power federally change the stature of the capitalist class? No. Like, the NDP, in order to maintain their own personal power, would likely put something in that would be like a token piecemeal reformist sort of thing. So basic liberalism, which the liberals themselves have forgotten is their role in all of this. And the liberals themselves are actually acting as conservatives now. And so the NDP would get in and they would essentially act as liberals, do some kind of small piecemeal reformist thing that the populace is supposed to look at and be like, oh yeah, okay, I guess we'll accept that for another decade. Right, this one thing, fine, I suppose, that we're all supposed to shrug and accept it while we sell our lives away for fucking nothing, and then the liberals or the conservatives would get in and probably wipe it away, right? Like that's the way the system works. That's the way the structure of this thing actually works, and the NDP are not like this is something that I'm like. Really trying to like I want somebody to actually challenge me on this next statement, right? Like I don't actually think people like Bernie Sanders or AOC are genuine at all. Like they just know what their brand is. They just know what people respond to. They just know that when they stand up and they say everybody should have Medicare, that everybody goes hooray and claps and then goes and votes for them. They just know that when they say tax the rich, a bunch of people go, oh, yeah, I'm going to support AOC for sure. Tax the rich. Yeah. And that's all they know. Like, that's all they care about. And so the question, and so that's their brand. And that's what they've built their brand around. They've built their brand around the idea of saying these things to people and having them vote for them. And I don't think that they're actually genuine about any of it. Like, I don't think any of these people are actually genuine about any of the things that they say. And that liberals especially are far more dangerous and duplicitous than conservatives, because conservatives are actually honest about what it is their plan is. They will look you in the eye and they will say, I'm going to destroy all of these social services and make it so that you just need to toughen up and work harder. They'll just say it to your face. That we want a system that rewards hard work. We want a system that rewards innovation. We want a system that like, okay, like, so what you're going to end up with is just like a society full of fucking grifters and psychos who understand that the way to climb in a power structure that is designed to impoverish people and abandon them is to exploit one another. And it's the person who finds out how to exploit people the best. And so what you're going to do is basically empower gangsters, right? Because it's the guys that are walking around with the guns that are willing to go to like people's shops and be like, it's a nice place you got here. Be a real shame if something happened to it. Like, these are the people who are actually going to get power, right? Like, it's not going to be like a baker or something. Cotton writes, good lord, the idea of Alabama getting fucking handled by the feds because they want to be racist little shits. The right people getting their asses beat by the wrong people. Yeah, they're not genuine, dude. Like, I just don't think that you can be genuine in American politics anymore. That the entire thing is a WWE style grifting match where in order to play the game, you have to show that you are not actually interested in helping the people. Like, you're allowed to be like a Hulk Hogan style figure and actually like be popular amongst the people, but you can't actually do anything for the people. You can't actually try to implement real policies for the people. In Ireland, people before profit politicians live on the average working wage in their area and donate the rest to labor unions. Actual solidarity. Wow, that would be actual solidarity. That'd be a surprising thing to see, right? Like, I'm to the point now with this society where like anything, literally anything, just even the most basic, rudimentary, small, piecemeal, tiny thing would actually be quite surprising. Like, I feel like our political class has become so unhinged from reality and has found enough of a base within the populace that has become unhinged from anything even remotely close to reality, that they don't need to do anything. They don't need to do anything. They don't need to respond to the populace. They literally are just like, they found their QAnon or their Blue Anon group that they can just sort of say whatever they want to, and they're being funded by corporate power structures, and so they don't actually have to do anything, and so they certainly don't want to. Like, none of these politicians actually want to do any work. Like, they want to show up, sign one paper one time, and like leave and go golfing. Like, they don't want to show up and do work. Like, what are you talking about? That's not what they're here for. That's not what they got elected for. That's not the reason why they got involved in politics. They got involved in politics so somebody else can do all the work. Like, that's what they're doing. Grinning says, I think Sanders is genuine, but also a coward. Maybe it's just because I donated to him, though. AOC got rolled in 18 months. Was she ever genuine? I'm doubtful. The counter argument that comes from liberals, right, would be that, like, look, these people need to steadily build power, that they can't actually just go in there and make demands, right? That's what will get them kicked out. They've got to show that they can play ball a little bit. They got to show that they can hang and be workable. But like, I don't think I buy into this at all. Like, you can see Republicans, like when there was the choosing of the Speaker of the House, for example, there was a group of Republicans that were just like, they ground their heels in and they refused to actually go along, right? And they refused to actually go along with anything. Unless they got some concessions. And the fact that these quote-unquote progressives are not digging their heels in and actually attempting to get any concessions really kind of reveals how kind of pathetic they are. And yeah, the Tea Party didn't wait, right? Tea Party like took that party over, right? And it's I think that, like, the Democrats in many ways are much more duplicitous than the Republicans. Because, like, the Republicans are just straight up. Like, I'm here through my heart. Like, I mean, they're delusional in their own way, but they're not lying to you. You know? Whereas I think the Democrats know that they're lying to you. I think they know what their game is. I think they know that it's about telling you what you want to hear. That Bill Clinton basically perfected this. Bill Clinton basically perfected the, like, I feel your pain. I know that you're out there and you're suffering, and I feel your pain, right? While simultaneously, like, gutting the welfare system. Like, that's as duplicitous as it gets, right? Like, he didn't run on a platform of, like, I'm going to absolutely decimate the welfare system. Although he did use the welfare queens, right? As if that was a serious thing. I'm always amazed at how gullible the populace actually is at the end of the day. Aren't you? Isn't that kind of the most astounding thing about being alive in the world? Is to see headlines come out that make you go, who believes this shit? Like, who's buying into this garbage? And then you're like turning and you're looking around and you're going like, oh shit, people are buying this. People believe this. Speaking of that very thing, here's something I wanted to share. This actually tickles me in a way I can't even explain. And I'm so happy to talk about this today. From the European Sociological Review from Oxford. The plateauing of cognitive ability among top earners. Are the best paying jobs with the highest prestige done by individuals of great intelligence? Past studies find job success to increase with cognitive ability, but do not examine how, conversely, ability varies with job success. Stratification theories suggest that social background and cumulative advantage dominate cognitive ability as determinants of high occupational success. This leads us to hypothesize that among the relatively successful, average ability is concave in income and prestige. We draw on Swedish register data containing measures of cognitive ability and labor market success for 59,000 men who took a compulsory military conscription test. Strikingly, we find that the relationship between ability and wage is strong overall. Yet, above £60,000 per year ability plateaus at a modest level of +1 standard deviation. The top 1% even score slightly worse on cognitive ability than those in the income strata right below them. We observe a similar but less pronounced plateauing of ability at high occupational prestige. So it goes like this. Woo, The richer you are, right? That it goes more. It's not exactly what I want it to be, right? Which is that I want it to be the richer you are, the dumber you are. That's what I want it to be. But it is nice to see that this whole idea of like, oh wow, he's got $100 billion. He's the super smartest super smarty pants there was ever a super smarty that ever existed in the world is total bullshit. That like someone like Elon Musk is probably not that much more intelligent than like a lawyer or an accountant, right? Like £60,000 a year, right? So it's like a fairly successful accountant. Like, and so Elon Musk is probably that smart. And maybe, in fact, according to the documentation, a little dumber. Even though I'm more or less of the opinion that that guy is just dumb. Adam says, I don't agree that Republican lawmakers ain't liars. Some might be religious fanatics, and others might be corrupted to the point where they have altered their consciousness. But most are bold-faced liars. I mean, George W. Bush, for example, was like, they got weapons of mass destruction. We're going to go in there. We're going to spread democracy. So I see where you're coming from, Adam. I'm not going to push back too hard, honestly. I just think that, like, the lies that... How should I say this? Like, I think that... Bush was stupid like a fox. Yeah, I think that Republicans will lie to get what they want. Democrats are lying about the whole thing. I think that's kind of where I'm coming from. That, like, you expect a politician to embellish the truth, to lie. You expect that to a degree. It comes with the territory, right? Comes with the territory. And... but I think Republicans are willing to tell lies to get what they want, whereas Democrats, their whole shtick is a lie. Like, the whole edifice of it, everything from the beginning is a lie. The whole, like, I'm here to even, I feel your pain. That Clintonite, I feel your pain kind of a thing is like total bullshit. And that the Democrats play a game of moral high-roading and present themselves as a moral option compared to the Republicans, when it's like, I don't really see the evidence. Like, what evidence do we have to say that the Democratic Party is somehow more moral or more just than the Republicans? And it looks to me that the position is they're just better at obfuscating. That's it. Yeah, Bush was stupid like a fox. He affected a stupid persona, but he's not that dumb. Yeah, I actually tend to agree with you, dude. I think that Bush is, like, I don't think he's a smart man. Like, I don't think he's like a fucking genius or anything. But I think that he's putting it on. Right? I think that the whole, like, Bush is dumb idea that got put into the culture were to Bush's benefit. And I think he probably played it up a little bit even. That, like, it's better to be thought of as incompetent than evil. Right? It's better for people to think that you dundered into situations than for them to think that you intentionally did these things. And, like, they did not dunder into Iraq. They did not dunder into Iraq. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew what the outcome was going to be. They got what they paid for. One of the greatest jokes I've ever heard about George W. Bush actually came from Colin Mockery during Whose Line Is It Anyway? And the setup was what George W. Bush is thinking during a cabinet meeting. And Colin Mockery comes out and goes, "There isn't even a cabinet in here." That's very enjoyable. That's very enjoyable. Opinions on democratic socialism. Grinning deleted it, but I actually tend to agree. It's the moderate wing of fascism that what the democratic socialists and what a democratic socialist is attempting to say essentially is we can use the electoral system under a capitalist mode, so the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. We can appeal to the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie and get from them a series of concessions. Typically, the democratic socialist tends to ignore the hard realities of the labor movement, or in some cases, outright war and civil war that occurred in order to wrangle out the concessions that they're currently benefiting from, and prefer to believe that those concessions were gotten through electoral politics. That's typically the position of the democratic socialist. And basically their position and their idea is that should fascism arise in their country, they'll be able to vote it out. It's not really something I take very seriously. That the bourgeois capitalist class may have in the past given concessions, but those concessions came from hard fights in the streets through strike action and in many cases outright war and bloodshed in order to get those concessions, because the capitalists were directly threatened existentially. And now, if your plan, if your idea through the process of democratic socialism is just to use electoral politics in order to vote in the guy who listens to the thing and all this kind of stuff, then you're steadily going to have those concessions stripped away. That any amount of quote-unquote democratic socialism that you think exists in your country, well, the capitalists are eyeing that up. They're looking at that thinking, but that could be my money. That could be me. I could wedge myself in there and parasticize that system and extract wealth from that for doing nothing at all. Right? That's the way the capitalists think. And ultimately, the thing that I think I don't really go in with the democratic socialists is that they don't actually really have a vision for the society outside of the system of capital. That they live in a state of capitalist realism where it is impossible to imagine a society that isn't capitalist, that capitalism becomes part of human nature, that it's simply impossible to be non-capitalist. And the best you'll ever achieve is some kind of managed capitalism. And that's more or less what democratic socialism strikes to achieve. And to me, it's just not enough. It's not good enough. Like, it would be like living under a king and having a guy say, well, we just need to appeal to the better nature of the king and he'll give us concessions. Instead of saying, why is there a king? Like, why do we have a king? What are you talking about? A king? That's crazy. And that's more or less why I don't really go for the Democratic. So I think there's a lot of well-meaning people, but I don't think that, like, if push comes to shove, like, if the thugs take over the streets and the United States is funding neo-Nazis like they did in Ukraine, and the Nazis are taking over, and there's a Nazi party in the parliament, just like in Ukraine and all of this. I don't think the Democratic Socialists are going to stand up and fight. That at the end of the day, should there be a rising fascist movement that actually attempts to destroy the society and subjugate its people, that the Democratic Socialists will bend the knee. I don't think they're actually going to fight. That the people who are actually going to fight are going to be the communists and the people calling themselves the socialists, not the Democratic Socialists. And the anarchists. Can't forget the anarchists. The anarchists certainly have a long history of fighting. But I think I understand why someone wants to be a Democratic Socialist, but when you really boil down what their position actually is, it's essentially just liberalism. It's essentially just, let's get concessions from the capitalist class through electoral politics, when there is literally not even a single scrap of evidence in history that shows that that works. There is not one single moment in all of history that shows we'll all just get together and vote for that guy and then he'll put in concessions and that'll work. We just need to appeal to the better nature of the ownership class. When has this ever worked? When has this ever worked? Yeah, just skip this bullshit and read Marx, exactly. Methane writes, I remember reading articles back when Bush was in power and they made that point. He wasn't as dumb as he seemed. I'm inclined to agree. Intentional persona. Yeah, it's all an intentional persona. I think that like one of the most important figures for people to understand what's happening in politics that you can see in media is the Futurama character Mom. That here, let's bring her up. Futurama Mom. That once you actually understand who this character is and how she operates on the show, and then actually understand that this is how all of them are acting, then a veil will be lifted from your eyes. That Mom is the head CEO of like the robotics company on Earth. She's the one responsible for all of the robots. So she has a monopoly on robots. So she's incredibly powerful and incredibly rich. When she's in public, she wears this outfit, right? This outfit you see right here. That she is she looks very mumsy and mimsy, right? And she talks like this. Oh, you know, dearie, I seem to not have enough change in my change purse today. My goodness, dearie dear. You know, it would be dreadfully awful if this didn't occur. And she's constantly got people, like she'll say like homespun things, and she's constantly got people going like, "Aw, what a sweet little delightful old lady. Aw, I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. Oh, well, I have to be going, everybody. Goodbye, oh goodness." And then everybody goes behind closed doors, right? And then she goes behind closed doors, and she literally steps out of this outfit as it is itself a robot, right? And she's actually like this. She's actually this like withered shrew of a woman who she's like lithe and she's evil. And she's absolutely evil. And she's mean. She beats her children. Like slaps them constantly, screams at them. She's constantly scheming. She's outright stealing from people. She uses her power and authority constantly to destroy other people and steal from them, finding ways to undercut them and destroy them. And this is how they all are. This is Bill Gates. This is Elon Musk. This is David Thompson. And the ones who aren't like this, The ones who are like not putting forward a public persona just don't have a public persona. That their strategy is to just not go out in public, to just not be, to don't do interviews, don't be involved. And that's people like David Thompson. That's people like Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, right? They don't really have a public persona because they're not they don't present themselves publicly. They're not like the face of a company or something. They're not the face of an organization. They're literally just a rich investor parasticizing the side of the society. But for the ones that actually do have a public persona and a public face, this is exactly what they're doing. That Bill Gates is going out there wearing a sweater vest with his dumb 80s glasses still, with his stupid haircut, sitting in front of all of us being like, well, you know, we're in the business of making robots, you know. And then he goes behind the scenes and he's an asshole. Like, it's so clear that this is what's happening. It's so clear that all of these guys are just creating a public persona that we're all supposed to be like, wow, yeah, that's right. Elon Musk is this Tony Stark super genius. I saw that on an article that definitely he didn't pay to have done. Like, Mikhail, good to see you. Thoughts on the new seasons of Futurama? Sorry to pivot. I know you're a sci-fi fan. Is that out? Is the new Futurama out? Because I haven't seen it yet. Is it out? Dude, is it out? I need to just look at it. News seasons of... My opinion of Futurama is that they could have kept... Like, to me, it's a total abomination that Simpsons is still going on, but Futurama got canceled. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, there is absolutely no reason why Futurama should ever be canceled. It is limitless. The potential of this show, the potential for social commentary, the potential for storytelling is literally limitless. You have the entire universe. You could just make up planets. You could just constantly be building a universe, right? July 24th. Oh my God, it is out. 11 revival premieres on July 24th. Huh. Well, I know what I'll be watching. Fry risks permanent insanity when he attempts to binge watch every TV show ever made. I'm in. But like, the fact that The Simpsons are still running. Like, The Simpsons ran, like, it finished decades ago. Like, it ran out of room, like, a long time ago. There's only so much you can tell. Like, and The Simpsons, like, the real benefit of the Futurama story is that, like, there's no top end to it. Right? That the characters are somewhat universal. It doesn't really matter. Like, it does exist in a kind of capitalist realist space that capitalism obviously is the prevailing economic model, and that they can't get away from it. But that isn't what the show really is about in a central kind of way. And so there's no real top end that you can constantly be just like you can constantly be talking about politics and modern events and things that are going on through this sci-fi lens. And I got to get a new mic. This mic. Are we back? Let me know, guys. Let me know. Let me know. Are we back? We're back? Time for a new mic. Time for a new mic. Time for a new mic. For sure, time for a new mic. Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys. It's just... we're all getting older, eh? Everything's getting older. Every day. We're constantly just in a state of degrading. I'm going to get a new mic. And so next show, new mic, new set will be set up and good to go. And I can't have this mic cutting in and out this way. And so wonka wonk 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 wonk. So annoying. Isn't it annoying? Very annoying. Anyway. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Like, as long as it makes sense to have a delivery company, you can tell basically any story you like. And it's the perfect vehicle to get these guys anywhere they need to go, to tell really any story that you want to say. Like, good news, everybody. We've got a delivery to the Omicron Center to deliver them a gear. And then whatever hijinks ensues is what ensues. And so it's endless. You don't need... The crew themselves never need to self-justify themselves. They can always be inserted into whatever story you need to tell, and it makes sense. So if you have like an idea out there in the world, they can always get in to that space. The Simpsons, on the other hand, are firmly planted in like a 1980s / early 90s kind of Reaganite neoliberal construct. That Homer is a single wage earner supporting 3 kids, a spouse who doesn't work, a house, and a car. And so the family has become incoherent. Uh-oh. You know what, guys? Honestly, I'm very, very tired. I think I might just call it quits tonight. I'm just going to go get a new mic, and I think I'm going to call it quits then. If we're having technical difficulties, real sorry to cut it early, okay, guys? And we can talk about that next time, Cotton. Bring that on up. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. This billionaire class is spending hundreds of billions of dollars to ensure you'll never realize it. Revolt. Rebel. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.